Okay, so up next we had Santino Marella backstage talking to his Cobra, talking about how nobody showed up to his summer party. Then Adam Rose shows up and pours some twisted tea in Santino's cup. The Rosebuds appear. They're singing and dancing. They sing the theme song. And this was literally a commercial for Twisted Tea on WWE programming.
I've got a question for you, Ashton.
Sure.
And forgive me if this seems like a stupid question, but other people had raised it, so I felt the need to ask you. How do you feel about WWE advertising an allegedly adult product, because, you know, this is an alcoholic beverage, on a PG product?
It's pretty freaking dumb, isn't it?
So you would agree with me then that this is not only odd, but pretty stupid, especially at this hour, because when this occurred, well, maybe they thought the kids would have been dead.
This was between 8:30. I think it was, you know what? I want to say it was in the first half of Raw. I want to say it was between like 8:30 and 9:30, maybe like 8:45 and 9:30. But still, in general, you don't want anything but your kid-friendly stuff to happen before 10.
Right, and I feel like this happened before 10, and that's why I'm concerned, because I don't know. I was going to say that maybe WWE assumed that kids would be in bed. And I bet you there are still kids, though, Ashton, even if we make that assumption that, oh, you can't do anything until before 10, that do stay up with their families and watching Raw as a collective family activity. So they see this, and they're probably like, oh, Adam Rose is drinking this, Santino is drinking this. I love those guys. Hey, Mom, can I have some? And then, you know, you have to deal with that. You know, you have to clean up that whole thing. I just thought that this was it. And not only that, leaving aside the potential ethical
Whatever happened to Diet Mountain Dew, Moggle?
Yeah, like, I understood, even though it annoyed me, I understood the Mountain Dew at Money in the Bank. You know, that's a soda, that's a carbonated beverage. This, though, I think it is, at least in my eyes, maybe I'm overreacting, and I hope people would tell us in the comments.
Forget Grey Poupon, WWE shilling Grey Goose.
Yeah, really. But no, actually, it just seemed like very quite, and really outside of the ethical implications of, oh, should we really be advertising these kinds of drinks when children could potentially still be up? Even if you want to put that in its own little sphere, which I understand, it's still weird that product placement pretty much gets its own segment. This blatantly, I might add. They didn't even try and hide it. Like, they were just slogging that stuff off. And, you know, showing that product with such pride, like, oh, Santino, the reason, you know, your party isn't so successful is because you didn't have this. Like, I'm surprised they didn't have two models, like, you know, showcasing the bottles. And then, yeah, the Exotic Express comes out. And it's just like, what? I love Adam Rose. And, I mean, you know, Santino, my hatred is waned because we don't see him as much anymore. But, you know, I still don't really care for him. But still, like, anything they do I thought would be bearable. This just left me scratching my head.
Yeah, it was definitely a WTF moment here.
Definitely. Completely agree.
All right, so up next, we had a brief discussion here. Cole appears to be fine. Apparently, Cesaro threw Kofi, and it hit Cole. Apparently, he got hurt during that segment, and they kind of came back and make sure that Cole's all right. We see Hulk Hogan's congratulatory tweet to John Cena. And up next, we got Vince McMahon's music, who comes out to a massive pop until the WWE Universe realizes that it's Damien Sandow dressed up as Vince McMahon. He actually does a pretty good job nailing the McMahon strut. He comes down the ramp to the ring, and he does the McMahon stomp up the steel stairs, and he gets in the ring, and he starts talking about how he's built a sports entertainment empire because he sees talent in men like Hulk Hogan, Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, of course, the crowd popped huge for that. And a man who is the most talented to ever step foot in the ring, Damien Sandow. That was hilarious.
I'm amazed that, like, he came out and he was able to keep a straight face, especially what he said, which is when I began losing it. And you know I've hated that Sandow's been reduced to this, but this is only the second time that it's really connected with me. The first was being Fandango's interpretive dancer. And he's like, I'm Vincent Kennedy McMahondown, and I started losing it. I'm like, oh my god. But you know what, dude? Like, I enjoyed this, and again, I know, this is like toxic levels of fantasy booking, but that's why you and I have so much fun doing this. Because to me, in my fantasy mind, this is yet another third blown opportunity for Sandow to really find a spine and create a moment for himself in relation to the Authority. Because, you know, Stephanie comes on the Titantron, and she's like, you know, Damien, how dare you? how dare you disrespect my father that way? You know, he's a pioneer of sports entertainment. You know, he's the reason you're able to have a job and do what you're doing right now, and you're going to pay for it. And I wanted so badly for him to talk back to her. The only two other times that I really wanted Sandow to stand up to the authority was one when they were berating him for not competing for the Occupy Yes movement, because they tried to get Damien Sandow to have a match. He said he wasn't going to do it. It was too crowded, too crazy. And then the SmackDown after that, where, you know, Triple H is lecturing Sandow. Sandow, of course, shakes Triple H's hand and panders to him, but Triple H still sticks him in a match against Seth Rollins, because the Shield were still in Triple H's back pocket at the time.
Right.
So the authority is giving him all this garbage, and if I knew that it was going to continue, I'd be really excited, actually, because I thought, well, sooner or later, a lot like Vicky, everybody has their breaking point. We just got to find Sandow's, and that's when things will get good. But that's not going to happen. You know why that's not going to happen? Because Sandow's opponent was the great Khali, who comes out. He was another one of the returns tonight, but again, as Ashton said at the beginning, you can't really call that a return because it's just lulls. Comes out, nails the brain chop, match over. Literally 5 seconds. It's just done. I wouldn't mind him doing these comedy things a lot like Charlie Haas did at one point in his career. If it would translate in some wins or some momentum or some grander plan, like what is – I just fear the day that I'm going to go on WWE.com and I've read that he's been released. I'm not that hopeless yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if just one morning he woke up, looked at his phone, sorry, Damien, we got nothing for you. God. It's frustrating.
Yeah. It is definitely frustrating. I don't know. This squash match was kind of to be expected. Khali was the first kind of big return of the night, and I only say big in the very literal sense in that he is a giant.
Right.
But yeah, then next thing you know, we see the door of the limousine open up that they had been hyping all night because we have this WWE champion returning. And when we come back from a commercial break, Justin Roberts announces the returning WWE champion and cross-platform success or whatever it was, and the Miz's music hits. And earlier in the night, I had told you, I guess the Miz is coming back because the WWE is building up this WWE champion who's this cross-platform success and all this other stuff, and they really want people to think it's Jericho, but it's probably just going to be Miz. And you were like, no. I looked on the dirt sheets, and it's not Miz. And I asked, well, why aren't you freaking out? And you said you were holding it in because you wanted not to spoil the surprise for me. And alas, it was the frickin' Miz the whole time. So he comes out, he grabs a mic, he says he's back, and then he starts immediately talking about how amazing he is and how dumb the fans are for not appreciating him.
When he said, I'm back, I actually had a clip on standby of Darth Vader's no kind of coincide, because that was my feeling. So I'm just like, no, it's like, why couldn't it have been more? Of course it's not, though. It never will be. I've gotten used to that. So I'm just like, man, I just pay to see him just knee you in the face. But yeah, he goes on and on about how awesome he is, about how when he was away, it put things in perspective because they were begging him to stay. They say, Miz, if you stay on this path, you could be the biggest movie star of all time. And I was just saying to myself, yeah, kid, go for it. Go for the films. I promise you. We can take it. It'll be hard, but somehow we'll get through it. Oh, look, Seth Rollins. And just begging him to just go back. But he's like, no, you guys undervalue me, but that's exactly why I came back, because I'm going to reclaim everything that was mine. I main event at WrestleMania, and I will not rest until I main event WrestleMania again, and you're all on your knees begging me not to go. Well, I can tell you right now, Miz, you will never see me doing that for you. Ever. So yeah, pretty much again, as Ashton said, full of hot air, talking about how great he is. But then, thankfully, we had an interruption to nudge, nudge, save us.
Yeah, so Miz is just going on a tear talking about how he's underappreciated, and next thing you know, freaking pyro, break the walls down, and the fans exploded, lights go out, Jericho's got his light bright jacket on doing the Jericho pose, he turns around, does his double fist pump, and Chris Jericho has returned to save us from the Miz.
Yes, he does his stuff with his light bright jacket, his poses, his come on, baby! And, really getting into it. Then Miz is just like, how dare you? I am a Hollywood actor. I'm the star of the Marine 4, damn it. Actually, he gives Jericho this beration after Jericho's silent at first, and he's like, oh, Chris, what is this, 2012 Chris Jericho, where you're not even going to say anything? So he starts talking at first. Then Jericho's just still standing there. Then he goes in his little indignant rant, and he's saying about, again, how great he is, how this, how that, and then the best silencer I've ever seen, the code breaker, out of nowhere, shutting up The Miz.
Yeah, it was pretty glorious, I have to say.
No, I quite thoroughly enjoyed that. We're talking about power rankings. Jericho gets my number one spot for that action alone.
Right.
Then Jericho goes on to say, man, that felt good! And then I pop with the crowd because I'm a mark and I hate The Miz so much. And then Jericho's getting ready to say, welcome back to Raw is dun-dun! Because then we get an interruption. And who cuts him off?
The freaking Wyatt family.
Oh my goodness. The Wyatt family, yes, and they are backing Jericho into a corner. And needless to say that Jericho versus the Wyatt family, as much as I love the Ayatollah of rock and roll, yeah, my money's on the maestro, the microphone, the eater of worlds every time. And,
dude, there was actually somebody on Reddit who suggested that Jericho should win the first match just so that he seems credible for when he finally does lose to Wyatt. To me, I don't care how many times Jericho loses, he'll never not be credible because he's Chris freaking Jericho.
Exactly. Not only is he Chris Jericho, the only thing I asked of Chris Jericho, because the Wyatt family beat him down here, and it did end with a sister Abigail and the family being victorious. The only thing I really expect from Chris Jericho working with a guy the caliber of Bray Wyatt, because I'll admit, Ashton, I had my worries after Money in the Bank. Bray didn't get his absolution. He didn't win the championship. Where do you go from here? Because he's such an interesting character. He's a main event level character. How do you handle a guy like that when so many other guys are monopolizing that particular scene?
Right.
And to me, for the criticisms that you and I have had of Jericho in the past, as well as the praise, because, you and I think we are fans of Chris Jericho. There's a lot of praise to go there as well. I do think Jericho was the best possible choice to be a placeholder for Bray's relevance until the next big thing comes along, whether that's Daniel Bryan or just something else. I think Jericho is that perfect medium in between all of that. I can't wait for this program, and I think Jericho
could you imagine, just throwing this out there, because everybody in their right mind is thinking that Brock Lesnar is going to win the championship at SummerSlam, babyface Bray Wyatt versus Brock Lesnar.
Holy crap, dude. Dude, that's why Jericho's so important, though, because he's going to keep Bray busy until all of that falls out and the other shoe drops. Yeah. And to finish my statement, because I realized I never did, the one thing I expect from Jericho in this feud, or that I really want from him, I want him to deliver the babyface equivalent in promos to Bray Wyatt that he did to CM Punk when he was a heel and they were feuding up to WrestleMania. That's the Chris Jericho that I want in terms of the speaking ability and everything else, because Bray Wyatt, again, is one of the best on the microphone right next to Dean Ambrose. I want Jericho to try his best. I'm not saying to succeed or whatever, just try his best to match Bray, because I think this program could really be something special. I mean it. I think these two could do something worthwhile. Jericho said that him and Bray tore the house down in a match on NXT, and apparently the NXT match implications were if Jericho lost, he had to join the Wyatt family. And, of course, he won that match and whatever, and apparently it was a clinic. He said if he had the chance, he definitely would want to work with Bray again. So even though Jericho puts all these guys over, where Jericho is protective of his legacy lies in creative control.
Right.
He decides who he wants to work with. So if I'm Bray at such a young age, the idea that a guy like Chris Jericho wants to work with me, I take full advantage of that. I'm curious what the narrative for this program is going to be, because Jericho just came back. What is Bray's issue with Chris, and how will Chris respond? But I think you could get two great matches out of this, one at Battleground, then another one at SummerSlam.
Absolutely, dude. No doubt about it.
I mean, I tell multiple people when I plug Twitter and do this and that I think you have one of the best booking minds that I've ever heard. If you're looking at this feud, what do you think the direction is? We know that Bray's going to go over, but how do you think this should all shake out if you were to even put it just a little bit out there for the time being?
Double turn. I would have Bray Wyatt win their first match, and then that drives Chris Jericho to start resorting to heel tactics to get into Bray Wyatt's mind. Bray Wyatt turns face in the process, and they have another match at SummerSlam.
They might as well. I mean, the crowd has practically turned Bray babyface at this point. When you look at how many cell phones are out of the audience when Bray makes his entrance, it is ridiculous. When you think about how many people that have sang and continue to sing when it's relevant, he's got the
Yeah.
whole world in his head. It's ridiculous. So he's over. Whether he likes it or not, like Stone Cold when he came to the realization, I think it was Brian Pillman, according to Stone Cold's book, that told him, dude, you're such a white meat babyface. And he's like, shut the hell up, I'm a heel. No, dude, you're babyface because the crowd made you that way. The script can make you whatever you want. If the crowd loves you, guess what? That's the alignment you are.
Yep.
And Bray is a babyface here. I hope they turn Jericho because that's the thing. I know you said that you, when we were watching Raw together last night, that you want that old school, like insulting Stephanie McMahon Y2J babyface. I think after really experiencing all those facets of Jericho that I do prefer him as a heel. So if it takes Bray Wyatt to get him back to that element, I'm all for it. So
Yeah. I mean, to me, the only thing that I don't like when Chris Jericho does, like this most recent run, is when he starts to phone it in. And you could really tell in the last 2 or 3 months of his most recent run, he just did not care. His matches were suffering. His promos were bland, generic, cookie cutter, cheap pop after cheap pop after cheap pop. He was phoning it in to the max. And as long as he doesn't go back to that, I'm going to be a fan.
especially with this program. And again, I don't think Jericho, and I'd be insulted if he did phone it in because, again, even though he's putting people over, I think having creative control is more important in terms of who you work with and what storylines you get.
Right.
And the idea that he's working with Bray, no, you don't phone it in. You go as fast as you can at your age, and you do the best you can within the confines of your abilities. Because it's Bray Wyatt, and I want this guy to be protected. I want this guy in the main events. I want this guy in the best programs. So I'm really excited about this. Oh, and for Chris Jericho fans, I don't know if you read this, Ashton. From what I read, because more and more information is coming out about Jericho's return, so far it's looking like he's staying until September. He's going to appear on the Night of Champions pay-per-view as well, so like September 21st. So we've got Jericho for a little bit here. I think it's just enough time to...
So just a little tiny bit less than 3 months.
Exactly.
So basically, he's on the RVD schedule. I'm guessing that means RVD's probably on his way out.
Yeah, probably. If Jericho's
These guys are just going to keep rotating. It's amazing.
Yeah, pretty much.
What we need to do is we need to get 2 more guys added to this rotation so that all 4 can work 3 months a year.
I would agree. Yeah, I like that idea because if Jericho's also working Night of Champions, I have to wonder if maybe he will turn heel in the course of that time and get at least one WWE World Heavyweight Championship match, maybe be a part of a 6-pack challenge or something, and get involved in that. I don't know. We know that the primary focus right now is the program with Bray. Let's see what these two can do, dude. This is going to be some exciting television, I think.
I don't know. I have this gut feeling that when Jericho is done with his business with Bray Wyatt, he's going to move on to Cesaro.
Really?
I don't know. Just a gut feeling that tells me that Jericho, I mean, if he's going to pick anyone other than Bray Wyatt to work with during this run, that Cesaro is that guy.
I think, he did mention Cesaro as another guy he'd like to work with, and who he's just such an admirer of the work that Cesaro's been doing. I mean, hell, it wouldn't be the first time that Jericho has interacted with a Paul Heyman guy.
Right.
Jericho did have hijinks with Heyman, especially when Punk, was away after losing to The Undertaker at WrestleMania 29. So maybe he'd come back and Paul Heyman would just be like, oh, God, not again. And, this time he starts stuff with Cesaro because it's like the King of Swing, the next big thing. And then Jericho would take up issue, next big thing. Well, now that I'm back, I'm the current big thing, baby. And,
right.
that whole thing. I'd like that. I think Jericho and Cesaro, especially because of the technical aspects of both of their styles, their movesets, I think they put on some awesome matches. So yeah, sign me up for that too, definitely.